Welcome back to 52 Lockup. I am your Apple TV, Cadma Bitten Apple TV. 52 Lockup is a series I started to talk about one of my biggest passions, true crime. A new episode on every Cadmaniac Monday for 52 Mondays, 52 crimes. Hope you guys enjoy. Be sure to comment, like, feedback, say something. I need a little feedback, something, just give me something. And as usual, viewer discretion is advised. Today's story is a recent story from my neck of the woods, New York City. There's no place like New York, none whatsoever. So let's get started with the wrong kind of Frankie. Frank R. James was actually born August 8th, 1959 in Bronx, New York. Let's see, in 1965, his father's name, by the way, his father's name is Charlie Cloud, I believe, I hope that's how I'm pronouncing it. Mother's name, couldn't find it, so it's unknown. However, in 1965, roughly 1964, when he was 5 years old, unfortunately, his mother had passed away, which left him, I believe, with his sister. I believe he only has one sibling. That would be Catherine James. She later on would marry someone by the last name of Robinson. So that left him without a mom. So I'm unsure if he was raised by his father or what else happened afterwards. But either way, while they grew up, different people who have known Frank over the years referred to him as angry, as being a little off. But they still saw him as a really, he's a good guy, he's fine. When he would become a little bit older, him and his sister would have lesser and lesser contact. So they had a very estranged relationship. But there's little explanation to why they don't have much contact. I don't know if it's just family dispute, no connection. I'm not sure exactly why they had no contact really with each other. There are no mentions of the father also, like I said earlier. If he was in the picture, if he was raised by someone else, it's very kind of scattered. I just know that he happens to be close with one of his cousins. So the reason why I know this is because one of Frank's hobbies was going fishing with his cousin Dwayne Waters on the weekend. But his cousin had noticed he had, mental problems over the years as they would pass. Now, Frank would spend much of his life kind of just bouncing around from place to place, state to state. By the time Frank was 31 in 1991, Frank is actually arrested in New Jersey. And from New Jersey, he's actually building up quite a rep, right? So he was arrested for trespassing, larceny, disorderly conduct, and criminal tampering. Just escalating a little bit, right? So when I researched Frank's history in New Jersey, I was checking out their public court stuff, and I saw that there was a sentencing date for a Frank James born in 1959, which would be him, right? But it didn't say the middle name started with an R, but the sentencing date was based off of January 29th, 1988. So I'm speculating that this is probably the same Frank, because all the other Frank James I found were either way too old or too young. So either the news outlets may have that little bit of information incorrect, but I'm not sure. But again, there was just limited information I could find on the New Jersey website. Now, when he returns to New York City, he brings his crimes with him. He was picked up in New York for a series of 9 arrests. This includes 4 possessions of burglary twos, a criminal sex act, twice for theft of service. So he's just building up a record, making his way. So while living in Irvington, New Jersey in 1995, he repeatedly had called Curtis Wright in Fairfield, New Jersey, and vowed some sort of violence over his termination. He was charged with 1 count of making terroristic threats and found guilty of harassment and sentenced to 1 year of probation. Sensing a lot of anger issues, right? We see a theme. Now, I found secondhand reports about Frank James's popular pastime. He liked posting online too, apparently. Whether it was on Twitter or YouTube, he seemed to have an interest on ranting on YouTube. Of course, I searched to the high heavens and the lows, looking for his official channel, but YouTube, they took that down faster than a guy falling off of a ladder. I'm not even kidding. I could not find anything. They were like, sorry, that channel no longer exists. We overlooked something. So it is nowhere to be found. In his online rants and social media journals, James would talk about mistreatment in the Bronx mental health programs. But of course, due to HIPAA, no one can really confirm or deny he was really there. So speculation, right? So we're here. Anyways, right? He complained about a Queen's job training program that he had that he felt was pushing him to explode, right? Another job he's angry with. He trained in the city program where he learned to work in a machine shop in 1992, which is out in Chelsea, actually. While he was committing those crimes, sporadically, he was learning a trade. And he was fired due to the expiration of his tax credit. So this would fall underneath the Employee Retention Credit, which is a refundable tax credit against certain employment taxes that equal to about like 50% of the qualified wages in eligible employers paid in order to pay like their employees. Employers apply for this program when they are like eligible, like they have to, it's something with like with their gross receipts, and it has to like show that there's been a drop, kind of similar to like when a pandemic hits. But avoiding into straying into a new YouTube series about finances, we're just going to go back to the story. And just in case for those who are curious, like, oh, can I apply for an ERC loan? I don't think so, and I'm pretty confident that that's been done because the pandemic already gave you the PPP loan, so I think the government's out, trying not to give up any more money. So anyways, in 2011, he bought a Glock 17.9mm semi-handgun in Ohio, USA. Apparently, he would hold on to this for the next 11 years. Yes, he bonded to it. Not too sure what he did with it, if he just had it. I didn't find any other crimes that he may have committed using a gun. And I'm nosy. I was all in there, like, on internet, like, who is who and where did he get what? So, in his videos, people saw that he had a New York Department of Employment card, which would be around the time he was in that machinist training program, right? So, New York Department of Labor made no commentary about that whatsoever. They're like, hey, didn't he work for you guys? We saw a card, and it's like, take it down! It's not on YouTube, so we can't comment. Bye. No one said anything. So he posted another video talking about, apparently a mass shooting that was, it was at Molson Coors Beverage Company in Milwaukee, right, on February 26, 2020, which is when a 52-year-old electrician went to work, shot 5 of his coworkers and himself. So on February 27th, 2020, Frank went online to talk about what happened, and he's like, this is my town, and he felt it was very important that the gunman was black. I'm not sure why that was important, but apparently that's what I could find from secondhand news on his social media that I could not get a hold of. He discussed videos about his hatred towards black women as well in other of his videos. He posts a lot about violence, being angry, systemic racism, but the things he's angry about are like, I don't know, there was a lot happening, right? There's a lot happening. The topics of anger is like Frank's way of validating his anger, right? And validating his behavior down the line, right? He also discusses conspiracy theories. He does a lot on his social media account. In fact, he seems more active than I am, and I'm supposedly with like over 70-something thousand on TikTok. So he seems like he's out there putting his anger out there. So now we're up to 2021, right? He moves to a unit in Harambe, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right? He has a neighbor named Kayla Miller, I hope I pronounced that correctly. She lived actually across from him from his duplex. She describes him as always angry and extremely unapproachable, right? So she talks about him always like being loud and angry and like screaming all the time, but he lived by himself. So she didn't know who he was screaming at, to be honest. And she remembers clearly that there was one time during winter, she actually left her key in the door. No. But she left her key in the door, and she hears banging on the door. Don't do that! Don't do that! And she's like just banging on the door, and she's like, "Whoa, calm down. Thank you." And she considered it to be a very weird response, the way how he was. And then she was like, "Wow, he's really unapproachable. I'm gonna stay away from him." He posts videos again in 2021 that shows he's wearing an Amazon workers cap. Amazon, out of all of his other employers, confirmed that he did work for them for 6 months. So now we see a pattern here, right? So Frank is jumping from Wisconsin. He's in Pennsylvania at some point, New Jersey, New York. He worked for DoorDash, Curtis Wright, where he threatened because of his termination, he threatened the people out there, probably because of his anger problems, right? He's doing a lot. He's not staying in the same spot. And maybe some people are like, they're like, oh, I'm a nomad. You know what I mean? Like, that's who I am. Some people there are. Other people, different story. So now we're in June 2021. He spent $93 at Phantom Fireworks showroom in Wisconsin. He went to get himself some fireworks, right? That'll all come familiar later on. Among some other items that he decided to buy that he would need, like canister smoke. So this is like a whole year before. March 2022, he posted up a YouTube video of himself criticizing Mayor Eric Adams. I think a lot of New Yorkers are doing that, but that's not the point. The point is, he addressed the public about the safety of the subways and announced the policies focusing on the homeless people. He was like very enraged about this, right? Which a lot of us are enraged about the New York City safety subways. A lot of us are pissed. So March 20, 2022, he posted that the video of himself driving. He's on his way to Philadelphia. He's leaving Wisconsin. He's ranting about race and nuclear war and Ukraine and traffic in Chicago. I mean, he was in a fucking mood. He said, and I quote, "As I leave the state of Wisconsin, about to be back in the state of Illinois, all I can say is good riddance, and I will never be back again alive." Morbid, huh? And I'm the one dressed in black, right? Anyway, he makes his way to Fort Wayne, Indiana to empty out his storage facility. He empties it out. Why do you have an apartment in Wisconsin and then like a storage facility in here, but you heading over to New York? Bro, you're doing too much. But anyways, March 25th, 2022, he arrives in Philly. He rents out either an apartment or a hotel. I had two, like multiple sources were saying either or, whatever. He was there for 15 days, and by March 28th, 2022, that's when he decides he wants to do his renting, because now he's obviously stuck in his mode of planting. April 11th, 2022, Frank is back online with his YouTube, because he loves his YouTube. And he posted about that he wanted to hurt people. And I quote, "I've been through a lot of shit where I can say I wanted to kill people. I wanted to watch people die in front of my fucking face immediately. But I thought about the fact, hey man, I don't want to go to fucking prison." After he posted that lovely video, he heads out to go rent out a van from U-Haul. So it's obvious he's in his moment. He's like, I want to hurt people, but I don't want to go to prison. Right, because all of us, want to go to prison, whatever. But also, side note, hey fucker, a lot of us are going through some shit too. But anyway, April 12th, 2022, around 8:45 a.m., Frank puts on a bright orange construction vest, carries his little gas mask and some other supplies. He boards the Brooklyn-bound N train in Sunset Park. He goes one stop, gets up, releases some smoke bombs. He pulls out the Glock 17 9mm semi-handgun that he purchased back in 2011 because I guess they're bonding or some shit. And he begins opening fire. People are screaming. People are running. Citizens are trying to protect each other and children, right? Just so y'all know, New Yorkers are not selfish because y'all always saying that shit about us. But anyways, his gun jams. There's one officer in the station who went to call it. Now, from what I had found, apparently he forgot to switch the channel to where he needed to call for backup. Some sources say that his radio was broken. The truth is, I can't picture the radio being broken, right? You're working, this is your thing, especially when you're working in this kind of city, right? You begin your day on the wrong channel. That makes more sense to me. You didn't switch it, or you hear gunshots and you're trying to run and you think you're calling the right people. That makes more sense to me than his radio being broken. But anyway, luckily for 29 people who were shot, they were not fatally wounded, which is fantastic, right? They were only like 8 minutes and under to like 2 out of the 3 hospitals that are actually trauma centers in New York City. So he fired 33 times. The gun jams. And when his gun jams, he just like, oh, shit. He just makes his way. His little 5'5" short ass makes his way out his way, right? When he runs, he drops his bag of fireworks, a bevy of supplies he took from his Milwaukee home and storage unit. Citizens were now placed in a position of trying to tend to those who were hurt, waiting for, those to come in, exiting, running. I actually had a friend who was actually on the train, but luckily not in that fucking car. Now, I am elsewhere, minding my damn business. My phone is ringing, bing, brrr. Friend of mine, like I said, was on the train. He's like, yo, bro, I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, what the hell's going on? There's a manhunt for this man's face. Whereabouts? Put across the city. News spreads like wildfire. Everyone's like, where the fuck is this guy? Where the fuck is he? New York City is tired of the amped up violence on the trains and in the streets. I'm going to tell you that right now. This is an old New York, and New Yorkers, we don't want that side of New York back, to be honest with you. So here we are. We're talking about all the crimes that's happening, right? I'm going to going a little bit of side rant here, right? We're talking about daylight raping, right? In the middle of fronted people on the train platforms. People who are, people are trying to intervene. A woman having human feces smeared in her fucking face while she's waiting for the train. MTA cameras failing at a subway station. A little too fucking common. A man was stabbed in the eye on the A train this year, I believe, because the malfunctioning cameras failed. So now we got someone, I mean, and you would think with other things happening, right? Because we had a pipe bomb in Times Square train stations over in 2017. We had fires going on March 2020. I think that was up in Harlem. I mean, we got a lot happening, right? We have women, a woman striking an Asian man with a hammer she kept on her purse like you would keep your credit card. Like, what the A woman herself was also struck with a hammer 14 times in the head. I mean, hell, even when I walked down the street, there was a guy who dropped his pants. Of course, nothing new in fucking New York City. But however, he proceeded to jerk off to aim his load towards me. And let me tell you, if there was ever a moment I was going to come close to murder, that would have been one of them. I saw a guy go to attack an MTA employee. The hate crimes, the violence, it is getting out of hand. Granted, the homeless were always there. Yeah, we get it. We know that. But the homeless and the crazed are now spitting and attacking people because those people want to go back into the institutions that they came from. Okay? Put them back. And it's like they released all the Arkham inmates on Gotham and then asking why Batman's so overworked. Like, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know what happened. So, sorry. Let me reel it back. So this manhunt starts with Frank, okay? Another reason for New Yorkers to be stressed out and tense. And you know what was taking the manhunt so long? The MTA's malfunctioning camera slowed down the cops from being able to ID the guy and find where he went. Like all the other crimes that I just listed. Yeah, that was great. So trains were shut down. Everyone's on high alert. 30 hours later, they finally are able to, like, in between that time, obviously identify him. The city's like, yo, we need to find him. This is tense. We can't have him. Out of 8 million people, this is the dude we need to find. Please find his face. His neighbor back in Milwaukee sees that he's in connection to the shooting. And she's like, oh, shit. I knew something was wrong with this dude. She packs her stuff up, leaves her apartment, and decides she is not returning until he is caught, which is fair game because she doesn't know if he's going to come back. Like, you know what? I didn't like you and how you left that key in that front door. I'm coming. He sees they're looking for him, and then he decides to call himself into Crime Stoppers, like, which is a little strange, right? He told the officers he was charging his phone, so if they didn't find him, he was going to be, like, around the area in the McDonald's. The officers didn't find him immediately because he had to go charge his phone because, you know, priorities. Fuck shooting people. Let me make sure I charge my phone. Right, all right, whatever. He was also spotted at the same time by a citizen. I believe the guy's name was Zach Tahan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and I apologize if I'm not. Who was running their store, and they spotted him. They called him in. He ended up being arrested without incident at St. Mark's Place and First Avenue in the East Village by Alphabet City, which is not exactly the friendliest part of the city, historically speaking. Anyway, just because it's Manhattan doesn't mean it doesn't come with some dirty tales. Now, the suspect is in custody. Woo! But as a New Yorker, you asshole. Like, we don't have enough to fucking worry about with the MTA hiking up prices, making us wait, delays, fires, all this other shit that's going on and everything else. Like, you son of... Anyways, aside from how I feel, tragic events have a path, right? There's a paper trail, right, to follow on. Hey, how do we get here? It's the part of the movie where the protagonist goes, hey, you're probably wondering how I got here. For Frank, no one's wondering. We don't fucking care. But anyways, I digress. I could never obtain the information that truly intrigues me that would allow me to put the pieces together the way I would like to put them together. To go, hey, something happened here. Something might be wrong with Frank over here. So I wondered to myself, how could you get to this point? How could you possibly get to this point? And then, you know, I wondered, what if he's sociopathic? You guys thought I was going to say schizophrenic. Nah, I'm not. Sociopathic. Sociopathy is actually in psychology refers to a pattern of antisocial behaviors and attitudes, including manipulation, deceit, aggression, and lack of empathy for others. The term of sociopath and psychopath, unfortunately, are used like they're interchangeable, but they're not. They are not synonyms of each other. From my understanding of it, sociopaths are basically a product of their environment, while psychopaths are basically born with it. Also, the other major difference between the two is that a psychopathic person will actually have no moral compass. Like, there's no comprehension of whatsoever. Like, so you mean I can't kill people? Like, I'm not gonna, like, why? Like, it just doesn't come through. Whereas sociopath will have either no remorse or very little of it. And he's like, yo, I'm choosing violence today. Doesn't give a fuck. Like, the whole other different person. There's no set checkoff list of, oh my god, sociopath. But there are common symptoms, right? There are things to, like, look out for. And when I say symptoms, I mean that very lightly because psychopathic people, psychopathy is actually not a clinical diagnosis, right? So we're looking at things where people, let me backtrack. Do not diagnose anyone else around you. Seek a professional. And don't diagnose yourself, right? But here, let me just go off with my list, right? Because I'm getting sidetracked. Ignoring social norms and laws. This does not apply to the person you think is fucking weird because they're living their life differently, happily, and are helping others. That is not a sociopath. Keep that in your mirror. We're talking about like social norms like stalking, stealing, destroying property, which Frank seems to have, checked off his list. Manipulation of others for personal gain. Again, don't diagnose the person that you may be thinking of. I understand doing things for your personal gain. That person could be a sociopath. They may not be. They also just may be an outright selfish prick. So, with other issues. So, let's not diagnose so quickly. Difficulty controlling impulses or acts without thinking of the consequences or even planning the future. That could explain his excessive house bouncing and his job switching, like in combination with his anger issues, right? And speaking of the anger is another one, right? Because anger is like the symptom for like everything. It's like the common cold. Difficulty managing responsibilities and very little to no guilt whatsoever while maintaining a moral compass going, I know that's fucked up, but I'm going to do it anyway. Keep in mind, sociopathy, again, is not a clinical diagnosis, but rather a term used to describe a cluster of personality disorders. So, seek a professional. Person you may be looking at may not be a sociopath, they just may be a dick. I am looking at his charming relationship with his cousin, which is interesting because he has like an estranged relationship with his sister, but he's going fishing with his cousin. He has antisocial behavior. He has a lot of intense anger issues. He has these outbursts. He's stealing. He's threatening others. He comprehends the consequences of his actions. If he kills people, he knows it is wrong. I mean, there's a lot happening in this fucking cake that no one wants a piece of. And I think it is difficult for people to spot when a person needs help, right? When they need help. And I have a good friend who is an amazing psychologist, and it was one of those nights where we were talking out of our asses, throwing crazy ideas from writing to the world, how we would fix it, those nights, right? And I had proposed an idea that what if psychological first aid and psychology were introduced from grade school, like middle school, as a required class. Now picture this, work with me, picture this. Picture every school across the country from middle school into high school discussing psychology and how to administer psychological first aid. In a few short years, you would have a generation of mini psychologists in a sense like that. It would be created. They would be able to notice changes in their peers when something is wrong, if someone is being abused, or when someone needs help. Anger can come a lot from depression, right? And perhaps if someone recognized these small signs in Frank, perhaps a community of those around him would have been able to swoop in and help him. I mean, sure, we all have the opportunity to seek out a psychologist or a therapist, but if you can't afford it, then we have a problem, right? So if you do something like that, a generation, one behind the other, at least in my head, right, would unleash people, not kids, because the concepts that I'm discussing, they're not difficult for kids. So these are kids that would eventually become adults. They would comprehend what is going on in their surroundings, with their peers, with themselves, right? It would create comprehension of another person on a whole other massive level. There are not enough psychologists and therapists in the world to tend to every single person. But if you create a subculture of people with basic training, imagine what we can create from there, right? I do not have all the answers. I'm not in position of power or money to test my idea. But from my perspective, psychological first aid and the introduction of psychology to middle schoolers, high schoolers, would be like teaching every person on this planet CPR. That's how I see it. And I think it's so important to pay attention to the signs when someone needs help, when someone, is going through something. And it's very, very hard for someone to come out and say, hey, I need help. Because I really think when it comes to mental health, it's still being laughed at. You're crazy, or you're playing victim. We have a culture where we're victim blaming people who were raped. Or if a girl is being groomed at a young age, at 13, 12 years old, by an older man, they go, she's being fast. But but they're not looking at the man. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we need to kind of like, I don't know, flip the switch on. And I feel like if we just created, we would have generations. We wouldn't need to wait 2, 3, 4 generations. Introduce it to the schools now. You want to fight about race theory? Whatever. But at least put the psychology in there. Put the psychological first aid. These would be people who would be able to actually help you. And they don't have to become a psychologist down the line, but they would have some kind of training, in a sense, subconsciously, in order to recognize when something is not right, when something is not healthy. That is so important. That would, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just talking and I feel like a mad woman. I'm like, I have the answer. Maybe it is just me. However, I really, for me, I can just see it. And maybe if someone in a position of power and money would like to put that idea out there. If you could just put my name at the bottom. I don't need any money. Just put my name at the bottom. I'll be fine with that. That'd be good. And the other thing I do want to talk about really briefly is the change that shooting on the subway kind of took. Because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. People are tense. Like I said, that is an old New York that we don't want to see back. Like, we're good. We're good. We're like, we lived through it. It can stay back there in the rear view mirror. The subways were different, right? So I was on the subways and stuff like that. So I was heading out, actually, oddly enough, to Long Island. And while I was heading out there for work, people were on edge. And any person, and if you know, like 4 o'clock in the morning, construction guys are making their way out to work. So anyone with a construction vest who were wearing their uniform, people were tense and kind of like low-key eyeballing them like, it's just a hammer. Wait, what are you going to do with the hammer, right? Because we've had the hammer attacks, right? It's intense where watching people who are dependent on the subways, and they're like, oh man, this is my only way to make money. This is my only way to get home, and be utterly terrified. Even when I checked on, I had to ride on another train the following day, prior to him being caught. When I say that train was packed, everyone was terrified to ride certain lines. And the truth was, it made sense, right? Because you're like, I don't know what this guy's going to do. He got lucky the last time in the sense that his gun jammed, but what if that doesn't happen the next time? Is he going to escalate? Is he going to do something more? The city was tense. I'm not going to lie, we were tense. Do we break easily? Fuck no. But the point is that, like, you put this panic across the entire city because you were angry because no one helped you down the line. What if we had those team of psychologists who could have spotted the issue? Maybe his sister wouldn't have been so estranged from him if she had noticed, hey, brother Frankie, you don't sound like you're doing so well. What the fuck's going on? So I just kind of feel like mental health is so, so, so important. And regardless of anything, Frank, I still think you're a dick for messing with us on the MTA. Like, bro, go find some shit to do. Find something productive to do. We have enough going on in the city. And MTA. Yeah, I kind of feel like your monthlies are a little expensive. And, if they're going to be that expensive, the cameras should work. I'm putting some ideas out there. Let the cameras fucking work. They see that they're malfunctioning. Get it done. Come on, you're in our city. I can't even speak English correctly. I have rode other transit systems when I was in other states and whenever I'm traveling, and the first thing I do is that I judge you guys harshly. Every time I see something happening on the train, I'm like, where are the cameras? Did they identify the guy? No, they didn't. The cameras didn't work. Thanks a lot. But yeah, thank you for finally being able to identify him. And New York, yo, we got this. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys next week for 52 weeks, for 52 crimes. Actually, technically, it would be for 37 more weeks and 37 more crimes. You guys have been with me for so long. Oh my god, thank you. And yeah. And for the neighbor, Kayla, you can go home now. Which I can't even imagine how chaotic he was. And hopefully someone rich and famous and powerful was like, that weird little girl on the YouTube channel, not knowing how old I actually am, is like, she has a point. What if we introduce this into our schools? Let's get to it, people. Thank you. Bye. Woo!